finally, further reading. You saw the book. That's available on Amazon, and I brought a few copies if you're interested. The recently released journal article, I actually wrote this a couple of years ago. It took a while to get through the journal process, and now it's available in IBM Journal of Research and Development. Talks about PEMDAS. And then for COBRA, if you're really interested in more on that, there's 2 papers available. The first paper is kind of the high-level one. The second paper is the really mathematical one. So in your level of interest, that's where to find that out. Okay, you've been a good audience. Asked lots of questions. Any more questions you didn't get a chance to answer?
I have a question.
Yes.
Take this math example. Math is a global company. This ingredient topic might have also been a regional problem. Do you have any plans for integrating other languages? Maybe a translation?
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. He's asking about multi-language, and everything I talked about here was sort of English, and would we do this in other languages and potentially use translation? And the answer to both questions is yes. We have versions of COBRA that work in Spanish and Japanese, and other languages are coming. Most of the techniques we use are not really language dependent. The only thing was the sentiment, as you probably saw, is very dictionary oriented. So you pretty much have to translate that dictionary. We use mostly automatic translators to do that. So it's not a huge process, but does require some work. We are looking at doing some automatic translation for the jams. So one of the next jams we're going to do is going to be in multi-languages. And we're going to have each post translated into all the other languages using an automatic translator. So we'll see how that goes. Yes?
For some of your underlying technologies, are you like using RDF and OWL and
No, we're not.
Can you repeat the question?
Are we using RDF and OWL as a core part of any of the work we're doing? Not yet. The closest we've started to look at that is through this analytic recipes idea, and the idea of having processes that you can reason about. These analytic entities might become objects in themselves, but that's still in the infancy. Yes?
Have you thought about combining, I mean, you can't present this as it's either confirmatory or exploratory alternative. Have you thought about combining the two in a hybrid approach to make this more applicable to non-textual types of searches, to apply these techniques to data that's already been processed by
I definitely think there's a lot of room for that. I think one of the easiest ways to combine them is you can have sort of the confirmatory results be inputs to the exploratory process. And you can do it the other way around. You can have the exploratory be first and the confirmatory come later. So I think that's coming. As we start combining with more and more of IBM's tools, IBM's bought a bunch of tools lately, Cognos and SPSS to name a few. And I think those tools are very confirmatory in nature. And so I think combining those with what we're doing makes a lot of sense. Yes?
I wonder, when you do data analysis, do you use any artificial intelligence complex persistent
Very little in natural language processing, and most of the other things, not much at all. I actually came out of expert systems. That was my first job at General Motors. I did a lot of expert system development. And I think a lot of that kind of informs everything I do in terms of capturing knowledge and objectives from the user as part of the process. But I don't use any kind of formal expert system techniques in those tools. I stayed away from the natural language. We do have other groups doing a lot of natural language work in IBM research, so it's certainly something we could include. The thing that I'm always reluctant about, though, is I really wanted every tool to be kind of this not taking anything for granted kind of thing, not assuming a lot about the kind of structure of the data coming in, whether it's grammaticalness and how well we could not necessarily parse it. And so I truly try to stick with statistical techniques. That's the reason. Yes?
I just want a clarification question. When you talk about research the pattern, now what library do you search from, and what kind of pattern? Do you try and find one pattern against the rest, or several patterns against the rest? How that's structured?
Well, the actual data we have comes directly from the US Patent Office as well as the European and worldwide patent offices. We get a feed from them every week and we include it in our own data repository. So it's our own source of data. We don't farm this out to any other search engine. As far as the kinds of searches they do, it can be both. You can start with a group of patents as your input and find patents that are related to those. Or you can start with a product description and find the patents, the individual patents that are closely related to that one description. There's no single way that people go about it.
Okay, so next question is really, if you use a one patent and search for the similar ones with it, how long it takes for one run actually gets the results?
Typically, I mean, it depends on how long a text you're looking at. You know, for a paragraph, it takes about a minute, less than a minute. For several pages, it might take 5 or 10 minutes. That's not very long. Yes.
Are there trial versions of software like Cobra out there on the web somewhere that we can go play with?
Simple does have a public website which you can get a temporary ID to. Cobra is actually owned by Global Services now, so you've got to work through them. And I assume that for certain customers like Sony, they would be happy to give you a trial version. Yes?
Is it a commercial product now, and how many companies are using it?
Both simple and, well, Cobra is what's called a service offering. And I would say at least a dozen companies are using it now. I don't know, I don't have the final list or anything very recent, but they've been marketing it now for about a year. But it is a service engagement. So what they typically will do is go into the company and help them build their models, and then install the software at the company and let them use it.
Basically, it goes with the consulting service.
It goes with consulting services, right?
Yes. Things in the financial services industry, if you want to set an analysis or.
That's one of the kinds of customers we have. I'd say financial services is a big part of it. Yeah, definitely. Yes.
Do you use any real-time web, like, Twitter for data sources?
Yes, but not real-time Twitter. We have a service provider who collects the Twitter feed for us and saves it in a repository, which we query overnight. So everything in Cobra is like one day late. It's not like real-time analytics. Any other questions? Yes.
What size data sets are you vaguely talking about? You said 30,000 patents in that library.
No, that's IBM patents.
Yeah.
The actual size of the library is 12 million, I believe.
Okay.
Actually, it's 12 million patents and then another 18 million research articles, so it's probably about 30 million total.
Not large in the scale of web things
Right.
at some level.
It's
but-
kind of intermediate scale,
Yeah.
if you will.
And so what, I'm just looking for ballpark, when you say it takes a minute to search, is that on your desktop or is that on the big Hadoop cluster you have in the sky or?
It's a moderate size cluster. I mean, it's like 6 machines. It's not a huge cluster. Yes.
Can Cobra take advantage of the structured data, and how does it do it?
Yeah, there's a service provider we use called Board Reader, which takes the web pages and crawls them and extracts certain structured features like country of origin, language, date, things like that. And we use that structured data as part of the analytics. We saw the taxonomies and the trend charts and all that. We use the structure from that.
Can you analyze like the relational database data?
In BIW we can. Cobra, no, it doesn't take just any old data warehouse and analyze it that way.
It doesn't take advantage of the existing relationships.
Right, no, it doesn't. Yes.
Have the intelligence agencies are using this exploratory technique?
I think we definitely had demos to intelligence agencies. We don't think anybody's actually bought Cobra at the intelligence
Do you
agencies
think
yet.
that would be right up their alley?
I definitely have been a little frustrated by that because I know, I actually did a project with TSA And it really showed that they could do some really good stuff with exploratory analytics. And then they got reorganized and they went away. And working with the government is very frustrating. To say it doesn't always work in a logical fashion. Any other questions? We've done a great audience. Thanks very much for having us.
Thank you.